So today I am here to finally show you how I dye my cross stitch fabric. This is like the #1 question I have gotten since I started my channel, and I thought that it was finally time to kind of show you what I do. I have the need for some new fabric, so perfect time. I just want to say right off the bat that this is not a tutorial. I am not telling you the right way to do stuff. I just want to show my own personal process. If you don't like what I do, if you think something I do is wrong, that's totally fine, but this is just how I do it, and it seems to work out for me most of the time, so I'm just gonna show you how I do that. So the first step, which I think is honestly the best advice that I'm gonna give you in this whole video, is to look at the RIT Dye website for their formulas. So RIT Dye is what I use for all my dyeing. It looks like this or like this. It comes as a powder or it comes as a liquid. I personally prefer the liquid, but the powder works just as good. You just have to make sure that you mix it really well so that you don't get any like splotches of color on your fabric. So yeah, on the RIT Dye website, they have a spot where you can look at a bunch of color formulas. It will show you kind of a swatch of a bunch of different colors, and if you click on it, it will tell you what different dyes you need to achieve this color. So I use this a lot as a guideline for what to mix, but I don't necessarily follow all of the measurements completely. It's more of just a guideline for me, so I know that, oh, I need this color and this color to make something like that color. So it's definitely really helpful if you need a bit of guidance in what dyes to buy, and it also helps me kind of decide what color I want, because most of the time I'm just like, oh, you know, I want a blue, but I need to be a bit more specific than that to get the result I want. So I really love this tool on the RIT Dye website, and I highly recommend using it as your first step before you buy your dye to figure out what you want to make. For materials other than your fabric and your dye, I personally use a kettle, but you can also obviously boil water on the stovetop, or I've even just put water in the microwave to make it hot before. So you need hot water. I usually use, this is my Eras Tour cup that like I'm never gonna drink out of again, so it's a great tool. This is what I'm gonna put my water in and mix the dye into, and then I have a plastic bucket that I put my fabric in, and then I pour the dye over. And then lastly, you'll just need something to mix. I just use the straw because I don't actually drink through this straw, so it's just something I can easily mix with. And I believe that's all you need. So we're gonna get this started. The first thing that I do is I am going to put my kettle on, wait for it to boil, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to get my first piece of fabric wet. So I think I'm going to do my Aida first. So I'm just gonna run this under my sink, make sure it's wet, and then I'll come back. Okay, I've wet my fabric. It's completely wet. My water has boiled, and I'm gonna put my hair up. Okay, so we are officially ready to start dyeing. So I'm gonna take this wet piece of fabric that I just wet in my sink, and I'm going to kind of just crumple it up. I kind of do this different every time. I often do this kind of spinning motion. Really, like, it's kind of like tie-dye. So this is what it looks like. I'll show you it in the, hopefully you can see that. I apologize, I don't have the greatest filming setup for this, but I basically just scrunch it up into my bowl. It doesn't really matter what formation you do unless you're going for a specific look, but I'm usually not. And next what we're gonna do is I'm going to pour some of this hot water into my cup. Make sure you don't use like super thin plastic when you're putting boiling water into the cup for obvious reasons. Now I'm just going to put a bunch of dye in here and mix it and kind of just experiment and see what comes out. So I'm going to start first with the aquamarine. I'm just going to put a touch in there. make sure to shake your bottles before you put them in as well. Next, the other two colors I need are powders. So this can get messy, so really make sure, I always am like laying down bags, or not bags, paper bags or paper towel. Just don't want to create a mess. So next I have this pink one, and I'm just going to pour that in a little bit. Then we are going to do the royal blue. I know you can't see what I'm doing right now. I don't have like a good setup where I can do kind of two angles, but I will show you in a second. I've now put all the colors in, and I'm going to mix it around. It's looking pretty dark right now, but another huge tip that I have is to get kind of like a random piece of fabric. This is just a like dirty 14 count Aida, and I just like to kind of cut this up into strips, into like little strips. And this is what I'm gonna use to test the color. Ooh, see, like it came out honestly perfect. This is exactly the color I wanted. What can I say? I really thought that I was gonna get the color wrong, but I'm really happy with how that looks, so I'm just gonna go right for it. So yeah, I have the color that I want. I have my fabric, and I'm basically just gonna pour it right over. I'm not gonna use all of my liquid, but I'm gonna use quite a bit of it to get a pretty like general, kind of get most of the fabric to be wet. I don't know how to talk. You should also probably wear gloves. Of course I'm not, but this, do as I say, not as I do, as they say, right? So I'm just gonna kind of scrunch this down. So I have my dye, and I just kind of scrunch it, trying to make sure that the fabric is getting a lot of that dye. I'm gonna flip it over, do the same thing. I'm gonna kind of let that sit for only like a minute or two. I usually do. I'm not like super patient, but I'm just gonna let that sit, soak up some of the dye, and then I'm going to rinse it out and see how it looks. I think I'm gonna go rinse it out now. So I just kind of put this under the sink, and I use like cold water, and I basically just rinse it until the water comes out blank, no color to it. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I just rinsed off my fabric, and here's what it is looking like now. It's obviously pretty wrinkled. And now is kind of when I evaluate, like, do I want to add more? Am I happy with the color? Going for another dip. So I'm just scrunching it up again. I'm kind of wondering if I should add any more color. I think I might add a tinge more angerine, or angerine is crazy, aquamarine. Looks pretty much the same, to be honest, but I'm just gonna go in for one more dye, maybe get a little bit of that white out. I'm not really going for like a completely solid look. I prefer a more mottled look, but obviously if you are going for a solid look, this is probably not the right way to put your fabric, but yeah. I like doing this because it also adds some variation to the color. It usually adds like some darker spots, so you kind of have those three tones. You have the white, the initial pour you did, and then some color from this one we're doing now. So I'm just going to scrunch that up again. Let me do a thumbnail while we're waiting. Okay, I am gonna go rinse this out again, and we will see what it looks like. So this is how it came out, and I'm really happy with this. It might be like a little bit darker than I intended, to be honest, but I think that it's going to work out well for the project I had in mind, and it also tends to look lighter once it dries. So that is my first piece of fabric. I'm gonna just lay this out on a towel so that some of the water will soak up, and we will move on to the next one. Okay, so now since I'm doing a different color for my next piece, I'm just gonna make sure I thoroughly clean all of my supplies so that I am not getting blue on my next dyed piece. So I'll be right back and do that. Next, I think we are going to do the 32 count linen. And this one, I'm gonna kind of go for a more neutrally color. So I'm gonna go wet this really quick and then we can put it in the bucket. I'm gonna put this in my container in some sort of way. And for this one, I am going to try to kind of do 2 different colors. So first we're gonna do this one, which is just camel, and then we are going to add some tangerine into that to make it slightly more orangey. So once again, just pouring my hot water into my cup. A bit more than last time because I do want to make sure I can do 2 layers. Plus I have more fabric on this one. Okay, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of this in here because I want this color to be pretty subtle. I don't use any measurements, so I probably cannot recreate most of these, but using the formulas, I kind of have a general idea of what I did. Okay, so that came out like pretty light, but I think I'm happy with that as my base color. I want it to be pretty subtle. So I'm once again just gonna pour this all over my piece of fabric. This color is kind of reminding me of like a tea dye, which I've actually never done, which is kind of funny. I'm just gonna scrunch up so that all the color gets it. Also be careful because the water is hot. And see, I did mess up a little bit here. As you can see, there is a blue splotch, which is really sad. So this shows you that you really need to be careful when you're washing out your stuff. We're gonna roll with it though. I think I'm gonna go rinse this out, and I'm hoping that I can just get a pretty dark piece of modeling on that part. So I'm gonna go rinse this out and we'll see. Okay, so this is how that turned out. You probably can't really see it very well because it's a very subtle beigey modeling. So here's the little blue mark. It is right in the middle of my fabric, but I'm hopeful that I can cover that up with some darker modeling that I'm planning to do. So this kind of shows if you do, I probably need to buy some more containers. I only have one right now, which is why I'm using only one, but you gotta be really careful to not do that. So I'm gonna add more camel, and then I'm also gonna add some tangerine. That is definitely a little too orangey for me. So I'm gonna add more camel. Okay, I think I'm happier with it now. This one I'm really going to kind of not do a ton of. I want it to be more splotchy. So I am going to use a little measuring cup, like just a smaller spoon for this. I have these ones specifically for when I dye. So I'm just gonna add like a little bit of splotch here. So here's how it's looking. I'm gonna go rinse it and okay. By some miracle, I have created something pretty cool. I had no idea what I was gonna make, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. I love that modeling. As you can see, this is precisely why I didn't call this a tutorial because could I tell you how I just made this? No, and it was literally right in front of you. So there are still some blue spots, like there's one right there, but that's pretty close to the margin, so I'm not worried about that one. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm gonna lay it down on my towel and we're gonna let it dry. Okay, I have completely reset. I have wet my new fabric. This is the gray one. I just boiled more water and I think we're ready to go again. So I think I'm gonna try to dye the next color is the same. I'm just gonna do like a dark gray modeling. So I think, yeah, I'm just gonna pour this over and see what happens. I honestly might just wet my pink fabric as well and just put it in the same bath. Fabric is kind of a risk with this color, not gonna lie, but I've seen some similar fabrics that I really like, so this isn't like a huge piece anyway. I'm just gonna try it. That's truly my favorite thing about doing this, is just kind of experimenting. As you can probably tell, I don't have like the best measurements or anything. I probably couldn't recreate most of the things that I do, but I'm just like having fun with it. Okay, I'm just gonna go rinse this out again. Okay, this one was really simple. I'm happy with how they look. I don't think I'm gonna do anything else. This is my gray piece, just a lot darker and moodier. That's how that looks. These are still like very wet. I have no idea what I'm gonna use this for, but I do really like the gray modeling. I think it looks so cool. So there you have it. Those are the four pieces that I dyed, and I'll probably come back later when they are completely dry to show you what they look like when they are dry. So I'll see you later. Okay, it's now several hours later, and I just want to show how everything looks now that it's dry, because it obviously gets lighter once it's not dry, or once it's not wet. So here's how the blue piece came out. I think this is going to be perfect for what I wanted it for. This piece is actually still kind of wet, but the fabric's really thick, so it's not gonna dry tonight. But yeah, this is kind of, I don't no idea what I'm gonna do with this, but it's kind of cool. Next I have this one. This one's probably my favorite. And lastly, this gray one, which also came out really great. I love the modeling on this one. I kind of didn't put that much down here, but that's fine. So yeah, those are my many different fabrics that I dyed today. I'm really happy with all of them, and I hope that this video was somewhat helpful, gave you some guidance. Again, not a tutorial, but I just thought that since a lot of people were asking, I would show you how I do it, what my process is. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again for probably just a regular floss tube next time. Bye.